everyone. Good afternoon, Ana. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation to talk with the students. I'm going to present you. So, Ana Paula Morales is a director and co-founder of Agência Bori, an initiative for social transformation through science and journalism. A scientist by training, bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences with a master in pharmacology from UNESP, Ana has been doing research and working professionally with science communication since 2008. She's an associate researcher at the Laboratory of Advanced Studies in Journalism, LabJOR Unicamp, and a PhD candidate in scientific and technological policy at DPCT/Unicamp. She has been executive editor of the journal Ciência e Cultura, one of the oldest vehicles for disseminating science in the country, of the Brazilian Society for the Progress of Science, SBPC, from 2017 to 2021. And Ana is an Ashoka Fellow, a global accelerator for social entrepreneurs. So everyone, please welcome Ana Paula Morales.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So I will start talking. I will present a little bit. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here talking to you all. Not only about Agência Bori's work, but especially why we do what we do. And it's a pleasure to talk to you, young scientists, because the main goal of our work is to try to change a little bit of the scientific culture here in Brazil, delivering scientific information to the society through the press. So I'll share my screen here. I have a presentation to do. We can chat later. And if we have time, we can do a little activity, but let's see how it works. Maybe if you just want to chat a little bit and discuss the topics I'm going to present here, we can just decide it later, okay? So I'll start sharing my screen. And Natalia, I don't know if we can leave the questions after my presentation. Yeah, we can talk directly, the students and I.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
If the students after my presentation, we can chat a little bit.
Okay,
and the
yes.
students and I directly, or I don't know if you want to mediate it, but okay. Just.
Okay. Yes, we can leave the questions and interaction thing. Yeah, students have microphones and they can also enter on Zoom in any case.
Okay, good. Because I don't want it to be boring. So if you want to chat in the middle of my presentation, feel welcome. You're welcome to feel free to interrupt me, okay?
Okay.
Oh, and also, I have a baby, a 10-month-old baby, which I'm still breastfeeding. So maybe I need to interrupt for a minute or two, but I'll let you know, okay? So here is, can you see my presentation?
Can see.
Okay. So this is the topic I'm going to talk about, the impact of scientific dissemination through the press for journals, scientific journals, authors, and the public policies. So first of all, I'm going to present myself. Natalia already did it a little bit. So I have an academic life. I am a scientist by training, as you guys. I majored in biomedical science, and I have a master's degree in pharmacology. I used to study calcium signaling and apoptosis, which is a kind of cell death. And when I was about to finish my master, I decided that I wanted to change my trajectory. I love science and I loved the lab life. I used to work with microscopy, fluorescence and confocal microscopy and astrocytes, cell culture, primary cell cultures. But I could notice that the people around me outside from my academic life, like my family and friends from school, they didn't know anything about science. They were very inspired when I said, "Oh, I'm doing my master in pharmacology." They would say, "Oh, wow, you're very intelligent. I think you all must hear that a lot." But people didn't really know what I was doing there in the lab. So I decided that I wanted to work with science communication because I thought that there were already too many brilliant scientists here in Brazil, a lot of good quality science being done, but I thought that the Brazilian society needed to know that. So I decided to work with science communication. I took a grad program in scientific journalism at LabJOR, Unicamp, where I am an associate researcher now. And after more than a decade, I started my PhD in science communication also, and science and technology policy in Unicamp as well. On the other hand, I never stopped working. I did my master and my PhD, but I was also working in a clinical analysis lab for a while, which is called Fleury. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't the path that I wanted to follow, and it's a really nice work they do there, but I didn't wanted that for my life, so I decided to only work with science communication. I work for the government of São Paulo and in public universities on the communication department. We had some science dissemination magazines, and I was the editor for a while. And I also was the editor, the executive editor, as Natalia said, for the Science and Culture magazine from the Brazilian Society for the Progress of Science, which is kind of a AAAS here in Brazil. And that, for you to know, that magazine is already 72 years old, so which is one of the oldest scientific dissemination vehicles, communication vehicle here in Brazil. After that, I decided to do something different. So a friend and I, Sabine Righetti, we had worked before together in the government, and she has a trajectory which is complementary. We say I am a scientist by training that afterwards started working with science communication, and she's a journalist by training that started working with science communication in the big media, as we say, and we decided to get together and to open a company, a small company. It's a consultancy actually, Data 14, Data 14. We did a lot of works, consultancy, science publications, and then we decided to open Bori agency because of our the things that we experienced as researchers and also as science communication. We know that there's a big gap in Brazil, especially between science and the media, the big media. And we had experienced that as professionals. So we wanted to construct a bridge, as we say, between these two big groups. So that is mainly what we do in Bori Agency. The Bori Agency was launched in the beginning of 2020, 15 days after the first case of COVID here in Brazil. So that was our last, as we say, our last before the pandemics, the last event that we all got together there in the university in São Paulo. And 15 days afterwards, we had the first case of COVID here in Brazil. So I'm gonna talk the context. Why did we decide to launch the Bori Agency? So I'll talk a little bit about the social communication of science here in Brazil and the case of our agency. So first, a little context of the country's social communication of science. So Brazil produces a lot of science. We are the 14th country in the world with the greatest scientific production. So we produce a lot of science and a lot of good quality science in many fields. But people here in Brazil don't know that. The last national public understanding of science survey that was carried out on 2019 shows that 9 out of 10 Brazilians do not know the name of a Brazilian scientist. So 90% of Brazilians cannot name a Brazilian scientist or a Brazilian institution that produces science. Also, if we go a little deeper, Brazil is one of the worst countries in the world in the evaluation of Pisa in science. We are the bottom of the ranking among all the countries that take that evaluation. And why? Why does that happen? We have some data that can give us some idea. So only 1 in 10 Brazilian public schools has a science lab. And even when they have the space itself, the science lab, many times it doesn't work. It's locked all the year because they don't have the reagents, they don't have the supplies to work with the kids. So when a school puts on the survey that they have a lab, it doesn't mean that they use it. But even though only 1 in 10, so 10% of the Brazilian public schools has a science lab. And when we talk about the private schools, we may think should be better, but only 2 out of 10 have a lab science. So our science education is very poor. So since it starts there maybe. And half of the teachers in the science area here in the basic education in Brazil, they have training in another area. So they teach chemistry, but they major in math. I don't know, something like that. So that's the scenario here for the scientific education in Brazil. When it comes to the media, we also have a scenario which is not way better than that, because only few journalists are specialized in science. Also, if we think about the big media, many of them don't have a science section anymore. Many of them had before, but they were losing because we know the press is very overloaded in a general manner. So only a few journalists need to produce a lot. They need to produce for the printed. If we take like Folha de São Paulo, you have the printed journal and also the virtual, the electronic version. So a small team needs to produce content for both. And the section of the science section itself doesn't exist anymore. They used to have a team of maybe 6 people a while ago, and now it's together with health and well-being. The science section itself is not that big anymore, and it happens with other vehicles as well, like Estado de São Paulo, Veja magazine, and other national vehicles. We took a survey with some science journalists that are part of the Bori community, as we call them, the journalists that log in, that they have the login at our agency. We call them as our journalists community. So we took a survey with them last year, and the top problems reported by the journalists about science coverage, it's mainly about the specialists, the 40% there in the graphic. it's about the specialists. They cannot, the main problems are they don't get to reach the scientists, and it's hard to talk to them, not only to get in contact with them, but also to exchange information because of the language many times that both use. And the other problems are more related to the press itself, the overload of work, the training. They don't have training in science, and some other problems. That's it. So, and also, sorry, I didn't translate the title of this one, but it's also about the context of the social communication of science here in Brazil. We have a bigger problem than only the science education of the population and the problem of the media itself to cover science. Lately, in the last years, mainly, we have official disinformation and scientific denialism. We have seen a lot of fake news concerning science and scientific topics, especially on the pandemics. We could see that very clearly when we talked about vaccination and the medicines for treating or not COVID. That became very, very clear. Now with the elections, we could witness an absence of debate on science. Nobody was talking about science. We're just living a pandemic state where science was the main topic. The development of vaccines and the disease itself was the media every day and every 24 hours a day. And when it comes to election, they didn't talk about it. There's nothing. There wasn't a discussion about science on the election race, and we cannot see it yet for the second round. And also, and even before, I guess, the pandemics, we had witnessed a lot of attacks on the press and journalists, which is not a very democratic way of debating different points of views. And it happens when it comes to science as well. So Brazilian society is far from science. We have seen that science education in Brazil is very poor. This press coverage of science is very poor yet, because mainly of the difficulties regarding the media dynamics, but also the culture, the Brazilian culture itself. Science is not in the Brazilian culture. When we say science is far from society, is that not only that people don't know scientific terms or the methodology for developing a vaccine or something like, or how the GMOs are produced. It's about the culture itself. It's far, people don't feel part of the science produced in Brazil, not even by knowing where the science is produced. So science is far from Brazilian society, and it's very serious. We could see the pandemics where it got to, and now we have polio coming back to Brazil. We have new cases we didn't have since the 70s, because we had the vaccination. It was the coverage of the national program for vaccination was very mature here in Brazil, and because of this scientific denialism, the people are not vaccinating anymore, the kids, and we know we have now cases of diseases that we didn't have from decades here in Brazil. So this is very serious. It's not a matter only of information and knowledge, but also about the behavior of people and public health. So giving that context, and also giving that I was a scientist that decided to work with science communication, and I could see how far these two institutions are. the science and the media here in Brazil, we decided to create the Bori Agency. So what do we do in Bori Agency? We connect the scientific knowledge of Brazilian institutions to the press throughout the country, the whole country. So the universities and research institutions from all over the country, also to journalists who work in different media, so TV, radio, newspapers, electronic portals, and I don't know, magazines. We connect them. And how we do that? Mainly by three services. For the first one, the one we started Bori Agency with was disseminating scientific work in an explained and anticipated way to the press. So before the paper, the scientific paper is published in the magazine, in the scientific journal, we give it to the journalists in a secret way and explain it to them so they have time to produce a journalistic piece and publish it or put on the TV in the same day that the article goes to the scientific journal, is published on the scientific journal. We also give direct contact between experts, so scientists of all the areas, all the Brazilian scientists from all the knowledge areas here in Brazil, to talk to journalists. And also we give training to both communities. So we train the scientists to talk to the media and to talk to journalists, how to prepare themselves, how to know if their work is a subject for a journalistic piece or not. And we also train journalists to cover science-related topics. So how we had a few days ago a workshop for journalists about the Amazon. So how is the burning and deforestation, how could they produce journalistic piece using science to talk about the Amazon? It's an example. We had about education as well, and food system, and many topics. So this is our team. We are a small team of 10, 11 people, and we are supported by groups that have the same goal as us, to deliver science to the community, to the Brazilian society. The first the first institution that gave us money to do something was FAPESP, which is the Foundation for the Progress of Science in the state of São Paulo. Serrapilheira supports us since the beginning. So since before we launched the Bori Agency, we had the support of Serrapilheira, and we still do, which is fundamental for our work. Also Google, Ibirapitanga Institute, Sabin Vaccine Institute, FGV, Institute Clima e Sociedade, and some other, but those are the main ones. This is a little bit about our numbers since we launched Bori Agency in February 2020. So we have already disseminated 376 scientific studies to the press, which is almost one study every 2 days. And we have an average of 15 immediate repercussions in the press. Half of the spokesperson of the studies that we disseminate are women. And we have more than 2,500 journalists on our community from all over the country, more than 500 experts in the source bank. We call source bank that platform where the journalists go to get the contact of the scientists. So if they need someone, if I'm a journalist and I'm part of the Bori community and I'm producing a piece on monkeypox, and I need a virologist, I don't know, someone, especially a scientist to talk about that, they can go to that platform inside of our website and look for it and get the email and mobile number of the scientists to talk to them directly and make an interview or something like that. And we have almost 500 scientists and journalists trained in our workshops that I have mentioned before. And we have more than 250 scientific journals in our community that are our partners for us to select the studies to disseminate to the media. So how do we choose what we disseminate? For you to have an idea, through our partnership with the scientific journals, we get to analyze about 500 scientific papers produced by Brazilian scientists every week. So it's about 100 papers every day that we need to look into and find which ones we are going to work on in order to disseminate to the media, to the press. So we have 5 main criteria. How do we choose a paper to disseminate? First of all, it needs to be unpublished, because it's very important for the media, for the work not to be on the internet yet. Even if it's a closed, paid with paywall journal, it's very important for the media it to be fresh new. That's why it is important. The second criteria, which is a criteria of ours, which we decided would be a criteria, is diversity. Not only about the theme, the subject, about the study, so it could be about the Amazon, about education, about public policies, about, I don't know, math, sociology. So we want to cover all the areas. So that's why we pay attention to that, to the subject. This spokesperson, we want women to be spokesperson of studies, because we want to show the diversity of science as well, and also about the region of Brazil. We don't want to cover only the science that is produced in São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro. We also want to show to the media and also to Brazilian society the science that is produced in the south, in the northeast, in the north, in all the institutions throughout the country. The third topic, the third criteria, is the journalistic quality of results. It's not a matter of quality being saying that the study is good or is not good, but a study can be very good, but it's not interesting for the press, because it wouldn't be interesting for the people to read. So we can have a very theoretical article, which is important for that field, science field, but it's so distant for the people's life that it wouldn't be good for a journalistic piece. We can talk a little bit more about that later. The fourth criteria is the impact on people's life. It's about the journalism. So journalism, it doesn't matter if it's about science or economics or, I don't know, other area. The subject of journalistic pieces need to have impact on people's lives or the interests of people. And the public dimension of the subject, if that is important about to the society or not. And now, and how we disseminate what we choose. So first, we need to choose the studies that we're going to disseminate to the press, and how we do that. So we produce a text, which is called a press release. So the journalist can read it. It's very short and very objective, and the journalist may read it and decide whether it is of his or her interest to work on that. So then they get to read the article and talk to the scientists. So we get the article, the scientific article. We talk to the scientists first to ask them if they are able, if they want to disseminate it to the press, because it's very important. The scientists need to be open to talk to the journalists. If the scientist says, okay, you can disseminate my study, but I don't want to give interviews, we're not going to do that, because that's the most important part of it. The scientists to talk to the journalists, so the journalists can produce a better article on the study. So we selected, we talk to the scientist. If he or she is okay with that, we produce a text and we disseminate to all the scientists that are in our community, the 2,500 journalists that are logged in Bori. They all receive the same material at the same time, and together with the explained text, the press release, they also get the article, the scientific article itself, the PDF, and the direct contact of the spokesperson of that study. So the email and the cell phone, so they can reach for the scientists to interview them. So in that press release that we produce, we search to answer 5 main questions. So all this information that are here in this slide, they must be on that text. So the first one is, who did the research? Scientists from which university or institution? And what is the main result? In the beginning of the text, that's the first paragraph of the text. The second one would be, how was the study done? So it's a very brief methodology part, explaining, for instance, if some people were interviewed, or if it's a math model about something, or I don't know, how was that, if they used cells, if cell lines, or if they use animals, or I don't know, how was it done, and where, if they had a control group or not, very briefly, and how the results change people's lives. It may, sometimes when we think about science, and especially basic science, it may appears to be very far from people's lives, but there's also a connection. There's always a connection, with people's lives. So that needs to be stressed out on the article, on the text. That would be when we as a scientist, when we write a science project to submit for an institution, for a foundation like FAPESP or something like that. On the introduction, we give the big picture of the area, the state of art, which is not an example. When I used to study apoptosis, I was looking to the cell, the calcium signaling. It's a very specific part of the process, molecular part of the process, but the cell death by apoptosis itself is related to cancer, to neurologic disease. So this is the broader picture. So this is how a project like the ones I used to work could have related to the people's lives. Do you get what I mean? We can talk also later about that, but that's it. And how the results change what was already known about science in this area. So it may not have a direct impact in people's life, but it may change the knowledge that science has in that field, or open a new path for study, or the development of new drugs, new target for drugs for a disease like cancer or any other. And what are the next steps of the research? So we have some cases that I would like to share with you. Okay. That are cases that I think are worth spreading with and sharing actually with you, because to give an idea of the importance, because when we say the science is far from society here in Brazil, and we need the people to know how science works and the knowledge that's being produced here, because it's important for their lives. It's very abstract sometimes. So there are some cases of studies that we have disseminated via Bori agency that I want to share with you, so you have an idea on what kind of impact you can expect. This is one case that it's a paper that was published in August 2020 in the journal Earthquake Spectra. It was produced by scientists from the University of Campinas, Unicamp, together with scientists from the University of Cordoba in Argentina and Johns Hopkins in the United States. It was a very technical paper. They were showing in that paper that the tagline of this slide is the name of the press release that we produced. That is in Manaus, which is the city in the Amazon in the north of Brazil. Earthquakes by gas exploration can damage up to $109 million a year. We had more than 20 journalistic pieces on that subject on the same day that the article, the scientific article, was published. And a few days later, that is written, that's the Luis Vieira, the scientist, he said, in a few days, the Ministry of Mines and Energy issued a statement stressing that it would not allow the extraction of gas using the technique that they study. So that was a very technical work from the engineering. I think they were from the engineering of Unicamp, and the same day, a few days later, that the media covered the study, it had a direct impact on the public policy that was being discussed at that time by the Ministry of Mines and Energy. So I think that's what the scientists, in the end of the day, everyone wants. We want to, as scientists, we want to produce knowledge, we want to have our articles published, and all, but we want to be recognized by our work, but also we want our work to help the everyday life, public policies, the people's life, and how the decisions are made. You know, when I talk about decision, it could be a public policy in Brazil, like the Ministry, Mines of Energy, but also can be a private decision. If I choose or not to take vaccination or to eat something or to consume something, that's also a decision. So this is one case. This is another case of one book that it wasn't an article, it was a book called Coronavirus Politics, which was published in April last year from researchers from the FGV University, together with researchers from the University of Michigan. And it had 40 journalistic pieces covering it after we put it on Bori. And it was cited in the CPI of the pandemics here in Brazil, because they got to know about the book through the media. So we disseminated the book, the media covered it, and it was cited in the CPI of pandemics here in Brazil. This is another one which was very interesting. It was a paper published in June this year by researchers from the National Institute of Atlantic Forest here in Brazil. It reveals the title of the piece was Research Reveals Digital Biopiracy as a Threat to the Conservation of Brazilian Bees. It had 60 immediate mentions in the written press, and it also entered in the agenda of the National Congress on the illegal trade of these animals. And also the ads of illegal trade of these animals were removed from websites. So we had double impact, which was very surprising, because also it was also a very technical article. And this one was published in a Brazilian scientific journal, Revista Brasileira de Enfermagem, in August this year. It was from scientists from the Federal University of Brasilia, together with researchers from Portuguese researchers from the Universidade Nova de Lisboa. It was an editorial, actually. It wasn't a study with new data, but it was some kind of analysis based on scientific data. And so it was about stigmatizing monkeypox as occurring with HIV, may delay the diagnosis of the disease. We had been recognized from our work. So we had been indicated to the German prize, which is called Falling Walls, in 2020. We had been nominated twice, in 2021 and 2022, in the Einstein Most Admired Press Agency, and of the Einstein Hospital. And also this picture here in the middle is that our work was recognized as a case study by the OMS on communicating science in the pandemics, which was it was great for us, because we had this training for journalists about vaccination. It was promoted. It was funded, actually, supported by the Sabin Vaccine Institute and also by Serrapilheira, and it was recognized by OMS, which was very surprising, actually, and nice for us. So, wrapping up, scientific denialism is stronger than ever. We need to take science even further. So it's not only a matter of science education and letting people know what science is being produced in Brazil, but it has some very serious implication, as we could see. And we have a long road ahead. I'm wrapping up now, so we can chat a little bit or make an activity. But these are some points we need to think, actually. We have a long road ahead, not only disseminating science, but we need to take the information to the people who don't get it, because the information is still restricted. We know some studies show that people consume science information mainly through the internet, and we know the algorithms, how they work. So some people don't get to how we say, to poke the bubble and learn something that is outside from their environment. So it's very, even though many people have information because they're connected to internet, they don't get to access the right information. We have many news deserts here in the country, which are places where the information don't get deep through the media. mostly because they don't have regional newspapers, or the media outlets are commanded by political families, so they don't get to talk about everything, or they don't have people covering science. Even the big journals here in Brazil, it is very hard to have people specialized in science. If we go to some places in Brazil, you won't find journalists that could cover science. Something that I think should be discussed also is who speaks for Brazilian science, which is the face of science has for the Brazilian population. If it's still the white old male guy wearing a white lab coat, or if the people know that science is diverse also, that we had many women leading labs and indigenous people doing research also. So we need to show how diverse science it is, to make science more diverse first, but also to show how diverse science can be. And also values this dissemination activity by scientific institutions, because many people, the decision makers, even at universities, many say that scientific dissemination is very important. It's crucial for us that society know about science. But what are institutions doing about that? Are they training their scientists? Are they putting money on it? Are they looking after new channels to talk to society and show the work and the value of the work that they are doing? So this is something that I wanted you to think a little, and we can talk. This is in Portuguese, but I think it could be nice for you to see. Guilherme is a scientist, Brazilian scientist, and he is a grantee of Serrapilheira. And he works with coral reefs. And he had a study that we disseminated through the press via Bori agency, and they had 70 journalistic pieces on it, and he was very happy and thanked us, and it was really nice because many scientists, it was on the first year, the first 6 months that we were on, that we had only just launched a Bori agency. So after that, many scientists came to us for us to work with them. This is the QR code for you as scientists. If you want to reach Bori agency, there are some ways you can not only talk to us, but there are some ways you can get to interact with media. You can be part of our source bank. You can let us know when you have a new scientific paper to come out. And also, we also publish analytical articles for the press, like opinion articles for the press written by scientists. So there is an activity that we could do now, but I think we should open. I don't know if you have questions, if you want to talk a little bit, or we should. There's someone raising their hand.
Just passing the microphone.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for your lecture. I think this is a really interesting initiative. I have several questions. So my first one is, do you consider any kind of research output beyond research articles, for example, systematic reviews, in the case of medicine, case reports, patents, software that is produced? Any kind of research output is considered?
Yes. Any case of production. We disseminate articles, we had white papers, reports, and book chapters, books, scientific books, so any format.
Okay, my second question is, what happened when there is no Brazilian institutes involved? We still have in Latin American countries helicopter science or parachute science. And for example, the Amazon forest is of international interest. What happens when there is no Brazilian institute involved? And it is important and it meets all the criteria you have.
Yeah. By now, we only disseminated research done by Brazilian researchers. It doesn't need, it could be a Brazilian researcher based here in Brazil on Brazilian institutes, but also Brazilian researchers in other countries. We do disseminate that kind of research as well. Is that a question? If
Yes,
the
but
researcher
also
yeah.
when you have a topic that may meet all the criteria that is important for Brazilian community, the country, but it is not done by Brazilians because it still happens.
Not yet.
Okay.
We kid that our next step is to show the Brazilian science to the media in the world and not only the national media. And after that, we can show like the world science to the world, but it would be like a third step.
Okay, that is great. And I have a last question is, do you have measurements maybe based on social media interactions? You showed us, for example, that you measured how many times it was reported in written press, but maybe you have out of the scope, I don't know, how many Instagram or Twitter shares or likes? I don't know, because it depends on the media that you are giving the content, but it could be a good measure for you too.
Yeah, we have our own social media metrics, but it's not, now we have started putting the DOI of the scientific articles, the posts that we produce. So we starting to see the altimetrics, the impact of our work on the altimetrics of the papers. So it's not really only social media, but it's something, I don't know if you are familiar with altimetrics.
Yes.
You all, we can talk a little bit, yeah. But we're starting to see some results on that also. It captures social media, but also some other paths.
Okay, thank you, Anna, so much.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have another question? Oh, there's, just wait a minute, passing microphone.
Hello, Anna. Thank you for the presentation and for all the amazing work. I just have a question regarding dissemination of scientific papers before they're published. How does that work? Do scientists approach you and say that they want to share their work, or do you actively scope for preprints or articles that are in press or something? Because we can't actually disseminate anything that hasn't been published yet, right? So I was curious about that process.
We do both. So we have some scientific journals, about 150, that they are our partners. So everything they're going to publish, we get to see that before it is published. And then we select it and we combine with the editor when it's going to be published, so we can show the journalists before it is published. So it's combined, it's a partnership with the scientific journals. And also the scientists send us. So if you have I have a paper that was accepted now, so it takes a while after the acceptance for the article to be published. So when it is accepted, you tell us, and then we get to talk to the editor if they're not our partners yet, and combine a date for the publishing. And that's an important question, because there's something that many scientists have, they ask us. So the scientists cannot publish their data before the article, because many scientific journals, they won't accept the paper if it was published somewhere else before. That's right, yeah? That's what you asked, maybe. But if you give it to the media before, it's not considered to be published yet, because the media is not going to publish the journalistic pieces before the article is published. That is very common in journalism. So, and it's very practiced abroad. So it's very the international scientific journals, they are very familiar with this proceeding. You know, you give it to the journalist, and they cannot reveal that data before the article is published. So the news won't come before the article is published. Is that clear? It's like I give you, you're a journalist, I give you the paper, and I say, you cannot, you read it, you talk to the researcher, you interview the researcher to produce your journalistic piece, but you cannot publish it before, I don't know, next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, you can put it online, but before that, you cannot, because that's the day that the article is going to be published in the scientific journal. And that's okay. That happens all the time in journalism, not only in science journalism. Many times you have a cultural fact. I don't know, a band is going to release a new album. So it's going to happen next Sunday, and they give this information to the media a week before. So everyone, that's why when you open, I don't know if you notice that, when you open a newspaper, you get different, the same news in different newspapers. You say, how come people know at the same time the same thing? So like Folha de São Paulo is giving the news, the same news that Estado de São Paulo and O Globo and Jornal da Globo and Jornal Nacional. That's why, because they had, the journalists, they had that information before, and they had that they could all published. Is that clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay.
They're passing microphone now.
Hi, Anya. I have another question. Do you only send to the press research that are going to be published in scientific journals, or do you also send like some research that have not been accepted before?
Yeah, we do work on scientific study that is not going to be published on scientific journals. It could be a book chapter, it could be a report. It has to be some kind of document. You know, there should be a document, so we can base our report on that, but it doesn't need to be a scientific journal. It could be a report or a white paper. Many institutions do that. Before they publish a scientific journal, they publish their results in several reports, you know.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, there's one more question.
Hi, Anna. Thanks for the talk. Could you comment, please, more about the criteria when you say journalistic quality of results? Does it exclude somehow theoretical works or mathematical, more physical works, these kind of fields? Because maybe I would say that maybe these are the fields that needs the most this kind of help of the press to go to reach the public. That's it.
Yeah, I will. A tough question, you know, because there's not a recipe. Like this is what is journalistic material or not. Let's say something. I gave you an example of the topics that one of the criteria is that it needs to have an impact on people's life. Okay, that's one of the criteria, besides the journalistic quality. But let's say astronomy. You have many studies on astronomy that are not really direct impact on people's life. It won't change my life. And now, if I know that a star died, I don't know what happened. I cannot even know. I cannot even name it. But people like to know about astronomy, even though it's very abstract for them or for me, you know. So that's journalistic material. And you see, it's not like people is gonna they're gonna read it and say, oh, I'm gonna change the way I produce my food or the way I do this in my life because of this article that I read, but it's of their interest. I don't know if you know, but one of the Folha de São Paulo, it's a newspaper here in Brazil, a national newspaper, and they have many blogs, different topics like gossip, celebrities, health and well-being, and I don't know, different topics. And they have one about astronomy. That's the one that they have more access of the whole newspaper. So you know what I mean. So we have disseminated theoretical work. It was an astronomic work, but it was theoretical, and we disseminated through Bori, and it had a lot of repercussion because it changed the way astronomy was looking to a problem. You know, it is very theoretical. I didn't even know that was a problem that astronomy was trying to solve, but since that work was produced by a Brazilian group and it would change the knowledge in the field, it was very interesting, and many newspapers gave it as a news. So you see how delicate it is. We need to analyze case by case to check whether it is a journalistic a material of interest for the journalist. So math is interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I was thinking about, it's like you said before, it's all about the culture of the country, of the society. And how can we start to change this culture of how can make people care about science, more about medical stuff, public health? It's due to pandemic, everybody is into it. And how can you expand this to other fields of science?
That's the $1 million question. When we think about science culture, it's something very bigger than the media, what media reports or not. It's about how we learn science in school, and not only how we learn science in school, and how we learn to think in school. You don't need to be a scientist to learn the scientific method, because you can for your life. So that's something that I consider. Is that okay? Because the image is paused for me. Is it working?
It is cutting a bit, but it's working.
Yeah.
Hi.
We
Yeah.
Can you repeat the last part again?
Yeah. So I was saying that the scientific culture is bigger than only what the media reports. It's about education. It's about knowing that science has a methodology, even though I don't practice science. I'm not a scientist, but I know how it works. I know how a scientist should work, not in details. I don't need to know how a technique works, like patch clamp. I don't need to know that, but I need to know that the scientists need to check and check again and have a control group or not, depending of the experiment, if it's an experiment or not, if it's theoretical. So that's the kind of knowledge that people should know in general so they can consume information, even though you're not a scientist. I had a professor, he used to say, here in Brazil, we don't play soccer professionally, everyone. Like I don't know how to play soccer, but everyone knows how it works. We know that how it works, you know the rules of the game. We know how it works, and that's okay. We cheer for it or not, but we know how it works. That should be the same as science. I don't need to be a scientist. I don't need to know the details. I don't need to have to cheer for anything like that, but I need to know the overall of it so I can consume the information. So that's what I'm thinking when I talk about scientific culture of the country. So there are many, many ways to engage society with science so we can help to change that scientific culture a little bit. It could be through education. It could be like we could like science fairs, science competition, or showing more women model for the kids, so the girls have a model of women so they can reach out and decide to be a scientist as well. So that's part of of the education. Another part is that the media. That's what we are working with, but it's only a small piece of the scientific culture. And we decided to work with the media because we are journalists. So I used to work with them. So that's what I can talk about. I'm not a teacher, so I cannot engage with science education. And also because those public understanding of science studies that I mentioned before, they all show that people consume science through the media, through the press, basically. It can be the TV, it can be on the internet, the portal, like news, something like that, by the radio, but it's through the media. So that's a very strong way to get to people, you know? So that's it. I don't have the answer how to change it, but I know that it's a very complex thing, and there are many ways we can engage so we can change a little bit of that scientific culture. And if we do that, we can work, if we work together, the result would be better. I don't know, you're all scientists, you know. Can I give you back one question to all you? If
Yes.
someone, okay. You have been trained to be scientists on the undergrad and or maybe grad. I don't know. I know you're on different levels of the academic life, but you're all being trained to be scientists. So you learned how to write a project. You learn how to draw an experiment and how to conduct an experiment, how to analyze the data, how to put the results in a paper, in a report or a paper. Did you get any training on how to communicate science with someone that is not a scientist?
Wants to answer? No, everybody's saying no.
No. Yeah, when we get our training as a scientist, we learn very well on how to communicate with other scientists. We know how to produce a poster. We know how to speak on a conference about the results of our work. We know how to write a paper. And that's all directed to our peers, to scientists. And if we think it, we are only talking to the very peers of ours, meaning the people that study the same thing we do. Because I used to study, as I mentioned, pharmacology. I couldn't talk to a theoretical physicist or a theoretical mathematics. I couldn't. If I get a scientific journal on mathematics, I can't even read the scientific article. I can't understand, you know? So even the scientists can't talk to each other if the fields are way apart, you know? terms are very technical. We may see an article and understand the structure. Oh, this is the introduction, this is the methods, this is the results. But even that changes in fields, in different fields. So we are not trained to talk to people. And that I think that's because science needs to be done, especially here in Brazil, where the funding for the science that we produce is basically the people's money, the taxes. So I don't know. I think we should engage more, and I think we should charge our institutions to engage with communication with society, or to train the scientists for doing that. You know, in the US and in Europe, in many countries, the scientists are trained to talk to the media. And when they are writing a project, get money for their study, the way they communicate to science is evaluated. You know, it's not only the papers, the scientific papers that they produce. It's also how many interviews they gave to the local or national media about that work. So it counts for the researcher career away. I don't know. Do you have some more questions?
So, do you have any more questions? No.
No?
There is one more left.
Anna, maybe changing a bit, but think about maybe potentialize the public engagement. You as an agent, when you are discussing about which topic or which work to disseminate, do you take it into account what it's trending in the society? For example, last weekend we saw the last chapter of Pantanal, and it we could see a huge buzz about Pantanal, and maybe this could be an opportunity to disseminate something about forest, environmental, these kind of studies, or no, maybe you use as criteria more the points you said before.
Yeah, it is an important topic. There is something called scientific dissemination or divulgation, in Portuguese, divulgação científica, which is something broader than science journalism. So when I'm talking about science journalism, I'm talking about journalism mainly, and the journalism that covers science. The same way that journalism covers economy and health and the politics, there's part of the journalists that covers science. So they have the same criteria for working with this subject. You know, that's why those criteria that we describe, they work for the media itself. But we also have the science divulgation area, which is more, it's more fluid, you know. You have people doing science divulgation on the social media. So that's a nice way to get the hot topics in order to bring science to it. I've been to a congress on science communication 2 weeks ago, and there was this guy, I can't recall his name, sorry, but he's a linguistic, and he does research on linguistic. And he's also a Big Brother, you know, Big Brother, the TV show. He's a huge fan of Big. So he started to use something that happened at Big. I think not this year, the year before, last year, to talk about linguistics, and he became viral at the Instagram mainly, and that's one thing that I think it goes together with what you said. You know, you can get the topics that people are talking about and get science into it, so more people get to know it. I think it's very interesting. It's not journalism, it's more science divulgation, I guess, but it's a way also to work with that. The Pantanal, I don't know if you mentioned, but they use no chapter, but one of the finals to talk about how dry it was. So they called attention to the climate.
Can you repeat the last part on Pantanal? The internet connection, I think, was stable.
Yeah, they used it to talk about how dry the Pantanal was. Used it to bring a little climate change discussion on it. It could be used by that scene and to relate to some scientific studies, if you think about it.
Does anybody? Oh, there's one more question there. Just pass the microphone.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for the talk. One of the things you mentioned was that there are, well, all scientific areas are somehow connected to people's lives, and the other thing you meant, but which to me seems, well, it seems right, but in a sense also too strong, because many, as you later mentioned, some things like the astronomy case you mentioned, some things are so very far away from all the elements in people's lives. So could you perhaps talk further about the examples of more theoretical science, like physics, theoretical physics, or mathematics even, which you mentioned, that were somehow suitable for the dissemination, the kind of dissemination work you did? Because talking from my perspective, which is of someone who does mathematics and the like, I don't feel my work is very connected to the daily lives of people, which is kind of sad in a sense. And even amongst scientific communicators, there is a scarcity for the mathematics ones, because it is a general challenge to somehow divulge, and sometimes it even seems purposeless when we try and communicate what we do, and then people say, oh, but and what is that for? And then you do not really have a good answer for that. A lot of mathematics is used only centuries after it was produced, when we are lucky, decades after it was produced. I know in Brazil, for example, I know only a single successful mathematics scientific communicator, but she kind of focuses on things like what a high school student would be able to understand, and let's sip in some things which are from a more advanced level of mathematics. So if you could perhaps expand your views on that.
Yeah, that's something important. I'm looking here, I'm searching for an article that we disseminated. I'll share the screen with you. I was talking about the astronomy case, but some topics are far from people's life, but they can be reported in a way that becomes interesting for them to read or to watch, you know? So it doesn't need to have, that's a general criteria, to have an impact on people's life. But even some work that are not theoretical, they do not, they may be very practical, but they do not relate to an objective change in people's life. You know, it could be related to the a new drug, to the producing a new drug for cancer, but it's the basics of the mechanism. So it's not going to be related, so we can make that bridge, you know, and not producing hype, not saying that this study is going to find a cure to cancer, but to show how it's related to the mechanism of the disease, you know. That's an example. I'll get this, let me share a screen. Ta-da-da. Here, can you see my screen? Yeah. So this is an article that was published in Nature Astronomy. And there were Brazilian authors on that. That's why we reported. So this is very theoretical. The observation of explosive stellar phenomena showed that matter colliding is the expressive source of radiation in the universe. It doesn't change people's life to know that, you know, directly. I'm not going to change my everyday life because of that news. But it's very important for understanding the universe. So it was very reported by the media, because people like to know that, you know, it's something that won't change my life, but I want to know this because it is interesting. So you can make something that is very abstract for people. It's not touchable, you know, it's not something that I'm going to use or consume or change my behavior, but it's interesting to know. So I think this could be related to math, you know. It's not something that I'm going to use on my everyday life, but it's interesting to know that that knowledge may affect the way we understand the world. Is that something, is it what you asked?
Oh, yes. It's on the line I asked. It wasn't really a very well formulated question. It's just something that a general issue that bothers me because of the activity I do, and because of somehow it being like, if we're talking about biomedicine, it's already close to people's lives by definition of what it is, because well, maybe it will be focused on animals, maybe it will be focused on humans, but in any case, humans are humans and animals are very connected to people's lives. But if you go to another topic, even in biology, perhaps if you go to a very, very deep thing in molecular research, which is not in an obscure system, it is very far away from and by the fact that you mentioned that also scientists seek the dissemination of their work, I was wondering which kind of theoretical scientists would be seeking that dissemination, because it would mean that the nature of their work somehow has this propensity and perhaps the necessity of being disseminated like this. But it made it more clear, yes, the report, the article you showed. Thank you.
I have three brief observations of what you just said. The first one is that not all scientific studies need to be subject of a journalism. You know, not every study is material for a journalistic piece, and that's okay. That's okay. It's the nature of journalism. it needs to be relevant and interesting to the public. And if it's not, it doesn't make the study less important or more important. It's just not subjective, and that's okay. That's one point. The second point is we have different ways to disseminate the scientific knowledge. Even when we talk about journalism, we have different journalist vehicles. So you have the everyday newspaper, when you have a very small space to describe something and to give that news, even in the internet, which is not a space itself, but you know, things cannot be too long. But you also have some other vehicles that are still journalists, that they develop more the story. So you have Wired, you have the New Yorker, you have Piauí here in Brazil. You have different media where you can get when you have time or space to work on the story to make that subject interesting. So maybe if it's a theoretical work, it could be more of a material for that kind of journalism, like literary journalism, where you get to talk about the life of the researcher, him or herself, how he or her came up with this idea. I was watching the ocean, and then I thought, oh, how does it relate to the, I don't know, the way, the laws of the math that I don't know, something like that. And then I decided to study that. And then I saw that this is related to that. You know, you can develop that story to make it interesting, but it depends on the vehicle, the journalistic vehicle you're working with. So I think you may think it's not a material, your study is not a material, yours or any study is a material for a journalistic piece, but it depends on the vehicle also. And the last part is that you said, oh, the theoretical researchers that are looking into disseminate their study. It's not only about the theoretical researchers. It's about any researchers, you know, who is interested in disseminating their work, who is seeking for that. It may be a personal interest, or I may be rewarded by that if I do in my career. As I told you, some researchers in different countries, they get points if they do disseminate their work, even when they're looking for money to do their research. So if the people who pay for your research, if they prize it, if they think they evaluate it, if it's important for the people, it becomes important for you. If your institution promotes it and gives you training and say you're going to get more money or more space or something else, if you disseminate your work, you're going to do that. You're going to maybe think about that, actually. Not everyone needs to do that, but even I think at least thinking about that, it's a good start, you know? Let me show you. Can I share my screen? We have 2 minutes, only one example of one work.
Mm-hmm. You can share
have
your
any question?
screen.
I will be very brief. This is a study that I gave you an example, that Guilherme Longo, which is a trainee of Serrapilheira, that we disseminated. So here it is. The article's title was "Trophic Interactions Will Expand Geographically, but be less intense as oceans warm." So it was about the climate change and the trophic interactions between fishes, kinds of fishes, and that was the main result of the article. It was a math model. It was a math model on that. That was the result of what journalistic speaking, not about important for life or for science, but journalistic speaking was the consequence of it. So the press release was about the consequence of the results of the findings of the studies. That would be, with the warming of the oceans, the coral reefs of the Brazilian shore would be taken by, how do you say algas in English?
Anna, can you repeat the last part again?
Oh, you say algae.
Algae, yeah, algae, of course, yeah. So that's how we transformed a scientific finding into something relevant for the journalist and the public. So it wasn't the finding itself, it wasn't the math model about the trophic interactions between the fishes, but the results of it to the coral reefs. That's interesting for people because many people in Brazil work with fishing and tourism in Brazilian shore, and this would be affected, you know? So that's how you can become relevant to people journalistically. The same paper, don't know if it's clear, but it's about framing also. That's why we need to check case by case to check whether it can be, the study can be interesting to the media. I know we don't have time. We ran out of time. I had an activity to do, but I knew it shouldn't, we wouldn't be able because sometimes the discussion is better. I can leave you the link afterwards, but I don't know. I'm open to, I don't know if I put my email, but I think Natalia can give you. If you have any questions, if you have any new work about to be published, please contact us because we can help you evaluate. Also, that's what we do, to evaluate if it's something that we, if it's worth spreading to the media. Okay. So thank you for your time. And feel free to reach me anytime you want.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay, see you. Bye. Thank you so much, Anna.
Bye.